My dad appears to be a villain. The long hair belongs to him. He has a large beard. He swore. His wrists resemble tree trunks. This is becoming somewhat intimate. There is nothing outside the family's purview. This isn't just another mining accident. Gold Rush fans. This is the tale of how Tony Beets and his son Mike, two of the most well-known figures in the show's history, went from being royalty on reality TV to convicted criminals serving life sentences in prison. The Discovery Channel's Gold Rush stars, Tony and Mike Beets, have been given life sentences without the chance of release. The shocking decision was made in a crowded Yukon Territory courtroom. One of the most notorious mining families was found guilty on several serious charges, shocking both the mining community and fans. As a result of their Paradise Hill operation, Tony and Mike were found guilty of conspiracy, false gold reporting, environmental violations, and claim jumping. The location, which was once used as a reality TV success symbol, is now characterized as the main office of a criminal organization. When Parker Schnabel, a rival miner working nearby, noticed odd activities, the investigation got underway. His report to the police set off one of the biggest criminal investigations into mining in Canadian history. Environmental violations were found by investigators on a scale never before observed in the Klondike. Since Tony has high expectations for himself, he also has high expectations for everyone else. That's the way things are. According to the prosecution, these were intentional attempts to circumvent environmental regulations rather than mistakes. Catherine White, the prosecutor, explained a tactic in which rules were disregarded in order to increase revenue. They were not shortcuts. These were long-term, systemic offenses. The sentence was handed down with solemn finality by Judge Robert Main. He cited the long-term harm they caused, the overwhelming evidence, and the defendant's total lack of regret. Both men received life sentences, and the courtroom fell silent. While his 35-year-old son Mike looked visibly shaken, Tony, 75, stood stoically. In recent seasons, Mike had become more and more involved in the day-to-day operations of the operation, frequently serving as the company's spokesperson both on and off camera. 11 weeks passed during the trial. When familiar faces from Gold Rush took the stand, a reality show was transformed into a well-known legal drama. Former crew members described how, after the cameras were switched off, they were told to do illegal things. These included uncontrolled mining operations and inappropriate waste disposal. In his testimony, Rick Ness discussed the so-called dual mining strategy, which involved off-camera destructive methods and filmed legal ones. He remembered Tony telling him, "There's real mining and there's television mining." Ness claims that every member of the crew was aware of the actions that could never be captured on camera and the repercussions of disclosing them. Minnie Beets, Tony's wife, provided one of the most damaging testimonies. She was the family's longtime bookkeeper, and in return for immunity, she testified against her husband and son. She produced financial documents demonstrating that gold was being sold through illicit channels and underreported. Her cooperation caused a rift within the Beets family and shocked many. A police officer promotes the excavator doses. "I am not required to be present. You know, after all these years of working together, you kind of think alike." Although they disagreed with the evidence, Tony's daughters, Monica and Bianca, backed their mother. They declined to make a public statement and left the courthouse via a private exit. Over the course of 3 days, Parker Schnabel gave testimony outlining the questionable actions he saw. In the middle of the night, he recalled seeing water runoff onto his claim that was contaminated with mercury and other pollutants. He claimed that even though he respected Tony as a mentor, he felt compelled to report what he witnessed for moral reasons. The presence of illicit chemicals was confirmed by his test results. The crew of Discovery Channel was also asked to testify. Some producers said they didn't know. Others acknowledged having suspicions, but refrained from reporting them out of concern for the show's safety. According to executive producer Christo Doyle, only 15% of mining operations are captured on camera. He claimed that the remainder was predicated on faith in the miner's moral character. The case sparked debate about reality TV's tendency to ignore immoral or unlawful activity in the name of profit and entertainment. In a statement, Discovery Channel denied knowing of any misconduct. The business expressed shock at the result. Another cast member, Fred Lewis, testified about a drunken exchange with Tony, in which Tony boasted about circumventing environmental regulations. Before the extent of the crimes was revealed, Lewis assumed it was just tough talk. Satellite photos, presented by the prosecution, demonstrated how wetlands were destroyed and rivers were rerouted. Up to 200 times, the legal limits for mercury contamination were confirmed by scientists. The defense called a former cast member, Todd Hoffman, as a character witness. However, when prosecutors brought up prior disputes between Hoffman and Tony, this strategy backfired. Hoffman acknowledged that Tony had once called his operation amateur and made fun of his more disciplined approaches. When you first met him that day, Tony, how did you feel? Well, Sal and Denny had a brilliant idea at first, and look what eventually came of it. But you have to give him credit for trying, Todd. Hoffman hinted that perhaps he was playing by the rules, which was the reason for the criticism. Evidence of illicit mining on Beets' owned land was then presented by the prosecution. In his testimony, Dave Turan described finding missing gold in tested areas, and later learning that his claims were being mined covertly. Turan claimed that despite encouraging test results, some zones inexplicably produced no gold. He now realizes that someone else has already extracted it. Jonathan Blackwood, the Beets attorney, contended that Tony's brazen TV persona had an impact on the prosecution. He asserted that dramatized reality TV footage and jealousy were the driving forces behind the accusations. However, when the court heard secretly recorded conversations between Tony and Mike, which were intended to conceal illegal mercury use during inspectors' absence, this argument fell apart. In one clip, Tony instructed Mike on how and when to safely use mercury without drawing notice. The defense's case lost all credibility as a result. Later, jurors gave anonymous statements. According to one juror, the evidence unmistakably showed deliberate crimes rather than misinterpretations. According to another juror with mining experience, the Beets operation was set up specifically to circumvent environmental regulations and increase revenue. In Yukon, the fallout has been enormous. The verdict was hailed as justice by some locals. Others were concerned about the harm to the region's tourism industry. Marion Clark, a resident of Dawson City, acknowledged that Tony contributed to raising awareness of the Klondike, but she insisted that responsible mining should become the new norm. The Beets mining claims and equipment are being evaluated by authorities. A large portion of it might be sold to pay for environmental restoration projects. Insiders question whether Gold Rush will remain the same, despite Discovery Channel's confirmation that it will continue without the Beets family. According to Chris Dumit, a show favorite, there were no winners from the decision. He bemoaned the betrayal of trust and the harm to the environment. When Tony and Mike were being led out of the courtroom by officers, Tony turned to the gallery and remarked, "The Viking has fallen." Then he left his empire behind and vanished behind prison walls. Due to the trial, clips from previous seasons now appear very different. Acts of deceit are being used to reframe once proud moments of victory. To emphasize the importance of mining regulations, environmental organizations have begun incorporating footage from the Gold Rush into their educational campaigns. The television industry has been forced to think about the case. Networks are thinking about how to keep an eye on off-camera activity in shows that involve high-risk operations or extraction. What, hey? I take it that you and the man came to an agreement? Honor it then. Be a good neighbor. That's all. However, they will claim that it will be that pleasant. Hey, you agreed to that. Respect it. Be good. Monica Beets and Kevin Beets, Tony's other children, were not prosecuted. They were not involved in the unlawful decision-making. According to the evidence, they expressed their shock and asked for privacy, as they made decisions about their futures in a joint statement. Stricter inspections for all mining operations have been promised by the Yukon government. Additionally, Discovery Channel has designated compliance officers to remain on the property throughout the year. The life sentences given to Tony and Mike mark a turning point in both mining history and reality TV. They also act as a terrifying reminder that notoriety does not equate to immunity. Tony Beets referred to himself as the king of the Klondike for many years. He is currently only inmate number 88,675,309. He believed he could outrun his empire of dirt, which justice had washed away. Following the sentencing, environmental agencies of the Canadian government started collaborating with local authorities to determine the complete extent of the damage. Experts from several provinces were called in to assess contaminated water tables, soil erosion, and mercury levels in several kilometers of Yukon wilderness. Some of the impacted waterways were once used as traditional spawning grounds for native fish species, which are now in danger of going extinct in those areas, according to court documents. According to experts, starting significant restoration would require decades and millions of dollars. At the same time, Mini Beets' financial trail was global in scope, so we're looking at about $4.5 million. Isn't that a substantial sum of money? That's a lot of money, I know. There doesn't seem to be any way out without taking that action. In my opinion, you're also taking a significant risk. Yes, we are. Correct. We believe this is the biggest risk we have ever taken. No, man, this is becoming serious. Proceeds from unreported gold sales, according to the prosecution, have passed through offshore accounts and black market buyers in at least 3 nations. According to reports, federal and international investigations are still going on, even though the criminal case in Yukon is closed. Under cross-examination, executive producer Christo Doyle, who was on the Discovery Channel side, acknowledged that a number of the cast and crew had voiced unofficial concerns over the years. Nevertheless, none were formally recorded, and no action was taken to look into them further. Doyle said Tony made excellent television, and admitted that the Beets' high drama plot and aggressive strategies helped the production team financially. He acknowledged that there were no systems in place to audit or confirm what happened when the cameras weren't there. A number of former crew members echoed that sentiment in court. There were those who regretted not speaking up sooner. Others spoke of an environment in which they were kept silent out of fear of reprisals or losing their jobs. Industry insiders are now concerned that this case could set off a chain reaction. There have been reports of internal audits, legal reviews, and sponsor backlash against other reality shows that focus on risky or unregulated industries. One thing is certain as the mining season draws near: the gold rush world will never be the same.